Hey everyone, welcome back to the Commander Experience podcast. Today we're diving into the Commander bracket system, the matchmaking tool that tries to rank our decks from ultra casual to full on CDH.
But here's the real question. Do this bracket actually reflect how we play, or do they just highlight the cards we can't use? And also, is bracket 4 the most poorly described bracket?
Let's take a look. So maybe we should start with what's ignited this episode. We recently in our private pod had quite a debate because we have always considered our private pod to be a bracket 4.9 where we play the ultimate power that is not CDH. And we have always had the one rule that is anything goes. But as it turned out, when push came to shove, that wasn't really true, was it, Jacob?
No, we got basically a new player in our play group, and he came in with what we saw as CH decks, and that caused some ruckus in our group, and what was okay and what wasn't, and yeah, down to the whole thing. What is bracket 4 compared to CDH? That was quite a long explanation in the group chat. So that's kind of what we want to talk about here as well. What we came to.
To put it into words, we have always said that playing CDH combos like Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle was all right in our part, as long as it wasn't a CDH deck list. Yeah. But this was what ignited the debate in our private part, because he had built a Demonic Consultation Thassa's Oracle combo into his deck, and even though it may not have been a fully fleshed CDH deck, we were okay. We said this was allowed, anything goes, but when it came down to it actually being played in our part, which it hasn't before, because a lot of us think that it's unfun to play that combo. But when we met it, we suddenly found out, okay, maybe anything goes is not what we want to do, and we actually ended it up house banning that combo in our part.
Yeah, for me, I think that was a hard one to swallow. I have not probably been the person in the pod that has tried not to house ban things, because I hate just the thought of it. But I think it was the cleanest way right now to like solve the current issues we had, because there is a lot of blurry lines here and what is what, and trying to describe the difference was actually really hard. And I think we have been lucky in the past to be pretty much on wavelength with each other. And now there was a discrepancy because someone didn't see it from our point of view, which makes sense because he's new to the pod. So of course he doesn't see it from our point of view.
There was no ill intent or anything like that.
No,
he's just trying to find his place in this new pod, try to find his footing in how powerful do we play. And he's only had a few games with us, so it's understanding that even when we said anything goes, I mean, the fault was definitely not his. We just never really played with that combo. And I guess that was why we never really had to have this conversation.
I think some of the line blurs also came from, and this is probably more of a... No, this is actually a bracket 4 thing as well. I think some of the line blurs came from... one of his first decks he played was a Vivi deck, and obviously we all thought it was CDH, and he pointed out to CDH as well. And he was like, we played against it because it was in GLGS and we just wanted to play, and that felt fine to play against. Our decks did handle that deck fine. So there is definitely a different where on the CDH scale things lie and how it's built. I will say that something that I didn't think before was that the way we handle power level is a lot closer to how casuals do that. That it is a lot about feelings, and it's hard to actually say this is where the line is and you overstep because of this or this and this. We basically had to like write a whole sheet to explain where the line was.
Yeah. And I think that's why we ended up house banning it, because I'm on the same page as you are regarding let's not ban anything. But when you have several people that are seeing and understanding Magic in 5 different ways, if you have to find a solution, there are so many gray areas now that you have to cover. Yeah. And it's pretty much just impossible. So as you said, this was just the most clean way, where this is the solution and everybody can understand that, because now we can play it.
Yeah.
The next question now is, do we allow breach lines in our part?
Yeah, that is the question.
We've seen some shapes in our decks regarding breach lines. We're not playing the most powerful ones, and our decks are usually not centered around it, so it hasn't been an issue yet. But let's see what the future brings.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what it is, because, and this wasn't something I shared with the group, but I kind of set off my own rules to not accidentally go into CDH. But when you have your own little rules, they don't have to be specific or don't have to be like explained well. I just know I don't do that because that will lead me down the path of CDH, because I'm already prone to doing that. So I kind of had my own little rule set I followed, and it's like not fair for me to expect that other people understand like this is a long elaborated thing that I have built myself. So
yeah, we've been around now we actually turned 6 in August, I think, our part, 6 years. So we've been around for a while now in this private part, and I think we've done a pretty good job of balancing it out. I think it is possible when you play with the same people to meet at the table and play at the same power level in some sort of
definitely
sense.
Definitely, I think that is possible. I will say though, after all these talks we had in our group, I think it's almost impossible to go down to the LGS and have the same experience. We have done that actually more recently because of sickness or whatever in our play group, and it is real hard to find our understanding, even if we go down really explaining to people that yes, we are playing bracket 4, but basically we are playing bracket 5 because we are what we call ourselves 4.9, and people are still like surprised how powerful our deck is. And the other way around, that and when people come, I'm not sure I can play a CDH deck against your decks, and we're like, let's try and see. And we saw ourselves that the Vivi deck, our decks could handle fine, and I have a Tiam deck that is not a 1-to-1 seeded list, but close. It's like 10 cards maybe difference, and kind of had the same plan, and that deck is also fine in our play group. Even for ourselves, it's hard to find the line.
But let's return to the original question regarding is bracket 4 in a bad place, meaning that I think it's the only bracket where you will meet a bigger obstacle, so to say, regarding having the same decks that are on the same power level, so to say. Because I do think there's a large variety of decks that people are calling bracket 4, and I do think that some bracket 4 decks, while they run enough tutors or game changers that yes, on paper it's a bracket 4, in my little world it plays as a bracket 3 deck, because the decks we are playing are so powerful and they wouldn't stand a chance even though it's a bracket 4 deck. So do you think there's some discrepancy regarding people that want to play at bracket 4, that it's more difficult than, let's say, bracket 3?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like the first obvious issue, and that's kind of the other way around, or upwards instead of downwards, is that bracket 4 is basically described exactly the same way as bracket 5. Like the only thing with bracket 5 is there is a meta, and whatever that means, because the meta can change all the time. So, but also the other way around. Like I was just thinking while you had the explanation there, I was thinking like, let's say that the bracket system was from 1 to 1,000, and you actually wanted to describe power level. I think that bracket 1 to 3 would be maybe 1 to 50, and then 50 to 999 is bracket 4, and then 1,000 in CDH. So that's kind of where I'm at when I'm thinking like the span in bracket 4 is so ginormous, because you can also see it in LGS that people play bracket 4 decks, and it's just because they opened a heuristic study and they had a demonic tutor from when they were a kid and they put it into their favorite deck, and now they have X amount of gate chambers, and technically it's a bracket 4, but the rest of the deck is just a random pile of cards that doesn't really do anything.
But we've also talked about this before, players misunderstanding power level and synergy, because I do think that a lot of players have powerful cards in their deck, but they don't have a lot of synergy. And I don't think that power alone comes with powerful cards, because a demonic tutor doesn't do anything on its own if it can't find a vital or important piece of a combo or some sort of engine. You're not winning with a demonic tutor, you're winning with the card demonic tutor is searching for. And with that said, I'm also thinking about, and we actually haven't covered this before because nobody's really talking about this, maybe because it's a bit taboo, but I also think it comes down a lot to the pilot that is playing the deck. Is this a new player? Is this an experienced player? You certainly in our part must have experienced this a lot. You came from CDH when we started playing together 6 years ago, and I was a total newbie. So you have kind of watched my my Magic history unfolding in some sort.
Yeah.
Me being hopefully a better player now than I was in the beginning. So I think there's a power level gap between the pilots itself, and that's not something that we talk about at the table, because I think when you meet up in your LGS, let's say you're sitting down playing a bracket free game, if you look at the decks, I will bet that one of these bracket free decks on paper is the strongest deck, and that's without talking about who's the strongest player at the table. Do you think it's justified saying that a good pilot adds more power to a deck than we would like to think?
I think so. Like, I think if you just take the whole span of what can, not power level of a player, that doesn't make sense, but how good they are at piloting in a deck, I think basically the bottom end to the top end, it can move a deck a whole bracket. And then that's also maybe why I think sometimes that our decks can actually handle CDH decks, that because maybe the player of the CDH deck haven't played it as much and doesn't really know what it does. And we have maybe played, you can say your Moldrova deck, you have played it 500 times. So you know exactly what every card does and what needs to be done at every turn. And that definitely for me moves a lot of things. And I think it has also been actually relevant in our pod that some people have played some decks that have been too powerful for our pod, but we didn't really care because the way they played the deck like underrepresented what it actually did. So I think it has been very relevant also in our pod directly.
And also, you must have, in some sort, have changed your play, and maybe even what cards you put in your deck back then and now. Do you recognize this at all? Well, what I'm saying is that in the beginning, my guess is that you were taking it easy on us. So making the games more fun.
There was definitely some of that, and especially I think in the deck building, for me at least, because that's where I like to do it most of the time. It wasn't so important for me early on in our pod that the deck was really perfect and spinning. I included a lot of random cards that I just liked because, hey, it's fine. It will do fine in the pod anyway. Where now, and I think for me at least, because I have always liked to adjust the power level in the deck building phase, where now I really have to cut in and make sure that the deck is spinning and actually goldfish a lot before I bring a deck. So I just don't bring it to waste people's time and my own time with that sake. So I think that's like probably the biggest difference, that the deck building process is a lot more precise now. It has to be if I need to perform in the pod.
I'm just thinking that, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, that our whole debate regarding the Thesis Oracle and Demonic Consultation really made me think that it's so close to being impossible sitting down at an LGS with 3 players you never met and be on the same page without each player dissecting their decks, explaining how it wins, what cards they're running, what are the game changes they're running, if any. Is it a combo deck? Is it not? Because without those information, there's no way to ascertain what power level the decks are. Even within bracket 3, I think there can be somewhat of a gap, but especially in bracket 4. But what I do think also takes place is people that plays at LGS, yes, we are playing in a private pod, but I do think that many people in an LGS is playing in a private pod in sorts, because it's the same players they're meeting week in and week out at Friday Night Magic and stuff like that. It's the same players and the same people. Yes, the pods might change up a little bit, but you get to know the people that you're playing with. But I do think that is the solution, and not a bracket system in some way, that you get to know the players you're playing with, because that's really the only way, in my opinion, that you can get on the same page regarding power level.
Yeah, pretty much. That you basically, when you begin to learn people LGS, at least that's what I did as well, then you kind of adjust to the pod, and you know, okay, this guy's he's also played bracket 4, but most of his games he's in the lead. So let's try to take him down first, or at least interact with his stuff first, and that's the best way to adjust. Because I agree with you. I think that the whole proposition of finding an equal footing in LGS, if you are brand new, if you don't know people, I think it's basically impossible.
Yeah. Let's move on to talking about the bracket system in general. And it kind of took over the old power level discussion where everyone had a power level 7 was the joke. But in some way, having done this exercise in our part, talking about what we allow and what we don't, I'm kind of falling back on, I do think that how flawed the old power system was. It kind of is the better system regarding talking about power level, I think, because I'm getting more and more into that the brackets are more of a card restriction list. So when you're joining a bracket 3, you know that you don't see any mass land destruction and so forth. It's not talking about power level at all when you read the lines. All it talks about is what not to do and what is allowed, not about power level. So people are not saying I'm playing a powerful deck. They're just saying I'm not running any latest man destruction. So
Yeah.
would you agree on this? And do you see the bracket system being a matchmaking tool that is working? Because I do think that earlier you said your deck was a 7, and then you had a little talk before the game, the rule 0, about what cards you were hoping your opponents weren't playing, stuff like Armageddon or whatever you have.
Yeah. It is a good question, actually, because I'm a bit split here, because I think that in some ways, like on the whole basic, if you just look at the list and read it, it's literally as you say, it's just a don't play this list. But after a little discussion we had on our bracket 4 and 5, I think that like reading between the lines, and that's maybe a bit sad. Maybe it could be described better. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think that basically each bracket is a whole mentality thing. So people in bracket 1 has one mentality, and 2 has another, and 3 has another, and 4 has another, and 5 has another, and that is like the biggest difference, but it's not really explained. Like the only place where it's actually explained is between bracket 4 and 5, because they are so close. So I think that's the only place where they actually write that you play the meta in bracket 5. But I think the best way to see it in your mind is that it's a pure mentality.
I totally agree with that. I do think it's a mentality, because I don't think you will find very competitive players playing bracket 2.
No.
In general, I'm not saying that they wouldn't play a bracket 2 game ever. I'm just saying that very competitive people have a tendency to play in the more powerful brackets. And so by that sense, it is definitely a mentality. But as you say, the bracket doesn't say that, because I do think like-minded people are playing bracket 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
You will usually find people with a deck that is around your power level because of the mentality.
That's also probably where like some of the issue comes in, because if you think you have a specific mentality, then maybe you just build a deck and hope that's what the other people in the pot think the bracket 3 or whatever mentality is. And as you said, a synergy basically beats everything, and we can see that in our pot as well. So if you're just a good deck builder, some people might see that as you trying to like pop stomp or cheat the system. Or
So what are our closing thoughts regarding brackets? Are they in a healthy place? Do they even work? I mean, I sort of have the feeling that we're in the same place we've always been. It's so difficult to meet up with 3 random people and be on the same page.
Yeah, I think the only thing it's probably good for me is it kind of explains why your mindset is at when you say to someone what bracket you're in, but it's not a very good matchmaking tool. I think that's my final thoughts.
Anyway, that was our take on the bracket system. We just thought we would have a little conversation regarding this topic, because we ourselves had a little personal stake in this, having done the exercise ourselves where we had to house ban a combo.
And thanks for watching, everyone. And if you have any of your personal experience with the bracket system, or people just being too good at pilots, share it in the comments, and let's see, so we can get a good discussion going, and maybe we can get some insight in some of the other brackets. I have been Jacob.
I'm Brian. Thank you for watching.